The world we're in right now is in such flux that I can't think of a more exciting time to be in the data space and being in the consulting space, because we as consultants are usually 2 to 3 chapters ahead of our constituent organizations, at least a chapter ahead. We're getting to do some of the coolest stuff out in the business in this space called data. We are showing and proving at some of our clients that the move from just traditional Gen AI, the quote unquote chatbot whole thing, but really creating agents to do things rather than just a Gen AI chatbot is going to truly transform again. It's a second turn of the crank, that clock. When I say change a clock, things that used to take 1,000 hours, we've conservatively guessed can be 35 to 60%. We keep it at 35% because no one's going to complain if you come in early. We don't want to be too aggressive, but we know it's probably closer to 50.
You're listening to Data Analytics Chat, where data meets career.
Welcome to Data Analytics Chat, the podcast where we discuss the world of data, AI, and the careers shaping it. I'm your host, Ben Parker, bringing you real stories, expert insights, and practical advice to help you thrive in the data industry. Today, I'm excited to welcome Tony Giordano, the Senior Partner and Vice President for Global Data Platform Services Leader at IBM. In today's episode, we'll explore his career journey, pivotal moments that shaped his career path, and also discuss how do we thread Gen AI into our processes. Tony, welcome to the podcast.
Ben, it's a pleasure to be here.
Brilliant. I'm looking forward to this. Obviously, Gen AI is obviously the popular topic, so it's going to be an interesting conversation.
I can't tell you how exciting it is to be in the data business right now. We're sitting here in 2025.
Okay, let's dive in then. And do you want to start off with sharing your career journey?
Sure. So my career journey has almost completely been about data. I started really in university, because in university, I paid for my university. So I needed a job, and I got a job as a programmer. And it was just a lucky break. And I built commercial banking applications for about 3.5 years while I was surfing through university. And when I graduated, I immediately went into the consulting business. I got an opportunity to work with a fellow British gentleman by the name of James Martin. He was really big at the time in a concept called information engineering. And he had a whole slew of books, still some of my 3 favorite books. Information Engineering 1, 2, and 3. Working for him, I got to work on a very small project at the Internal Revenue Service where they were doing a project called Tax Systems Modernization. And it was taking things off the mainframe and putting them on time in an early client server. And I got to work with technology such as Oracle and Teradata, a lot of the technologies we've been working in the data space for many, many years. And that led me to a job offer to Oracle. And spent a bit of time working in London. In fact, I was down in Chertsey, working for Oracle. Did that for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years. And then I got a chance to go work for a global team called PricewaterhouseCoopers, or Price Waterhouse at the time, actually, and joined them. And it was a small band of about 50 practitioners that were really defining what data warehousing world was going to be all about, early aughts. So I joined that. Had a great time there and never left, to be honest. I stayed there, was focused on data and business intelligence and data integration. Ended up staying through the IBM acquisition. Ended up running North America data, grew about $450 million business. And then at IBM, you have this thing, you won't get promoted unless you have got certain stripes. And IBM stands for I've been moved. So I took a job in Japan. So I ended up running the data practice in Japan for a couple of years. Took a little walkabout. I had a chance to work for a digital marketing company called Merkle. Went there. Then IBM called me back up. And Ben, you seem to be a pretty smart guy. Merkle was based in Maryland, and I was living in Baltimore. And I was going to leave Merkle and join a small company in Philadelphia when I got a call from my old friends at IBM. They said, "Hey, we'd love you back." I said, I've been there, done that. They said, "Yeah, but we need somebody to run our European practice." I said, "Okay, from where?" And they said, "Well, from Paris." Faced with the choice of Philadelphia or Paris, I chose Paris. Came back to IBM, helped run their European practice, did that for a couple of years and had a lot of fun. really helped transform the data warehousing business into what's now really our open source cloud-based data platform business that we have today. And we had a lot of success, and I was asked to take over the global role. And that's when I took that over, and we've grown it to well over $1 billion business. And that's a quick synopsis of my background. But as you can hear, my whole career has been around this really interesting space called data.
Yep, and it's taken off now, isn't it? It's just crazy. It's obviously amazing to be in as well. A lot happening. I mean, I guess obviously you've worked in some interesting countries. How do you think that shapes your career?
Every single project experience, every single client, every single person I've had a chance to work with, whether in country or out of country, has formed my point of view on data and how hard or how easy it is to do. I will tell you, a lot of my confidence is based on the facts that once you see a pattern established in one place, done by very different people, because the Japanese do not speak English very well, but if I can build a third normal form database here, a dimensional model there, a denormalized pattern on cloud object store over here, I happen to know it's probably something I can do anywhere. Come to the conclusion over time, there are certain patterns in data in IT that are never changing, but constantly evolving. And that's really what I've observed over my career is there's a lot of things that we do in data to this day that go back to when I started in this business and some of the people I learned from. But it's much more evolved today than it was back then. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think obviously things are, obviously constantly changing, aren't they? And I think, like I said, you've been braver than me. I moved from the UK to Spain, but I think when you do move countries, you meet new people, you do learn different perspectives. I think it does add to your personality and your learning, doesn't it?
Well, it's interesting. I was literally making fun of myself yesterday and was presenting to a group of practitioners about how to do solutioning in the age of agentic, because a lot of folks don't realize how much solutioning is going to change. And we don't need 3 months to build data models. We can do it in about 10 minutes. And I made some comment like, this ain't good. That somebody said, well, that's not very correct English. And I said, yeah, but I'm from the Midwest. When I lived in Britain, I lived there twice. They were always telling me I didn't speak English very well. So I just accepted that. And it's a little fun poking fun at oneself. But yes, the cultural changes from one country to the next have informed how I interact with people. And I found self-deprecating humor to be incredibly useful regardless of the audience. And self-deprecating humor is good in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Hong Kong, Indonesia. And I've had a very fortunate career. I've literally worked across the planet. I've worked in Jakarta, Thailand, India. I was just over in India. I was just over in Japan. I've been in Europe 3 times this year. I was in Amsterdam twice. I was in Vienna once. So I've had a very fruitful career and very lucky.
Yeah, man, that's amazing because I think when you go to different countries, it's new learnings, it's dealing with new people. I know. Obviously, everywhere you go now is quite diverse, but when you got that opportunity to work in different places, it does add to you. I mean, I've done sort of like remote working, done traveling in Asia and things like that. It's good to meet different cultures and things like that. I think it's interesting. Like I said, it does shape you, gives you confidence and to meet new people and understand people's ways of life as well.
So Ben, here's an interesting thing to share. Often forget about it. While I run the global practice, and there's about 7,000 of us, and that's senior executives to entry-level developers, I have a direct team of about 40 people. And of those 40 people, there's probably 10 of them that are the people I go to get a lot of stuff done. And this is from offering management to deployment to development, to building assets we use for the way we do data today. This is one of the pivots IBM has really invested in is pivoting towards asset-based development. And we can get into that in just a minute, but just to let you know, the call I run every Friday morning. And now I tell them, you're the best people I've ever had a chance to work with. And I mean it every single time from the heart, not from the head. My development leader is in North Carolina, not that fancy, Raleigh. But my deployment leader lives in Singapore. One of my integration specialists lives in Morocco. I've got other folks living in India. I've got folks in Europe, in Bratislava. I got a group in Poland. So I run truly a global team on top of running a global practice. And my campaign people, God help me if I forget them, because they're some of the most important people on my team, all live in Barcelona. So every Friday morning we have a stew of different countries. But what we have is a bunch of common practitioners with great passion for what we do, who all speak the common language called data and serving our clients. And we have a hell of a lot of fun doing it.
And I think that's what matters, isn't it? If you've all got that shared goal, it's all that matters, isn't it, really? So then, I mean, for yourself then, Tony, you were at IBM, then left and then joined again. How was that?
So what's interesting is you brought up an interesting cultural thing where I think you've probably very quickly ascertained my personality. It's pretty apparent, pretty bold, and I'm aware of who I am and my limitations and my strengths and my weaknesses. When I was asked to go to Japan, I was going because I was asked to go to Japan for a couple of different reasons. Number one, the data team in Japan had never made their numbers ever. Secondly, they had brought a lot of other American gaijin over there to try it. And okay, this is Giordano's turn to try this thing. And I had been to Japan on a couple other trips for other reasons. And I really sat back to reflect, how am I going to do this in a way that is successful? And it's successful for me personally, successful for IBM, and most importantly, successful for the Japanese. So I made some ground rules. First ground rule was, I am not going to try to be somebody I'm not. I'm a Midwestern boy. I'm not ashamed nor proud. It is who I am. I grew up in Michigan. My dad worked for General Motors. I went to school in Ann Arbor. I'm a Midwesterner. Try to be something I'm not would not make any sense. So I'm not going to fit in. And the Japanese are very insular. And it's funny, the last day I finally figured out the difference between Nihonji and Gaijin and why we get called Gaijin. If you're not of the people, then you're outside the people. That doesn't mean you will never be accepted or you won't be treated with respect. It just means you need to understand your place. So one of the things I observed, and this is really important because this gets into one of the cultural lessons I learned, nothing to do with data, but just how to deal with people in other places. Most Americans or Brits that would go to Japan to live and work, they'd show up around 7:38 in the morning and they would leave around 5 or 6. Well, most Japanese people don't come that early. They usually show up around 8:39. They leave at 11:30 at night. And this is something that's been instilled in the Japanese culture back to the 90s when they gained their industrial eminence. They kind of took charge in the world economy. And a lot of Japanese don't have to stay that late, but it's almost a shame if they leave early. It's like, why are you home so early? So the Japanese don't leave till 11:30. Well, so I show up. It's middle of August, actually almost toward weather we have right now, early August, and it was very, very hot over there. And this wasn't that long after Fukushima. Japan was suffering power problems. What all Japanese companies did to show solidarity with the Japanese government is after 5 o'clock, they would turn off the air conditioning in July when it's around, 85, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So my first day there, and back then, the Japanese would still wear 3-piece suits, and they walk around in 3-piece suits if you're not at your desk. If you're at your desk, you take your jacket off. So my first day there, I kept my jacket on, even sitting there. And then 5 o'clock hits, and you can start feeling the air conditioning go off. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. The team I'm now responsible for keeps looking over me like they're waiting for me to leave. I wasn't going to leave. 10, 11, I'm not leaving. My jacket's still on. It's probably 85 degrees in that office now. And some of the Japanese are now loosening their tie. I hadn't loosened my tie. And I'm sitting there, I'm furiously working. And I'm now back on North America time, because keep in mind, this is my first day there. And about 12:30, somebody goes, Tony-san, are you going to go home? I said, well, I'm going to leave with the team. 1 o'clock, 1:30, people start leaving. 1:45, the last person walks out and I walk out with them. Next night, we leave around 12:30. And from then on, they realized I was going to be the last person out the door because I was going to support the team. Now, for a team that never made their numbers, they would listen to me. I would say, here's what we need to do to sell this stuff. Here's how we need to do to deliver it. Because most of these folks are still back in the mainframe day. Well, why aren't we doing this on IBM mainframe or IMS? I go, because the world has now moved long beyond that. So I would spend sessions on Friday night teaching them the new patterns that we are doing and where we've been successful with this, because the Japanese will not be the first in anything, but they will replicate and improve on any pattern that has been successful elsewhere. Our first quarter, Ben, we made it by $2 million. The second quarter, we made it by $12 million. But even on Fridays, we left at 11:30, 12 o'clock. After 2 years of this, I was ready for something different. And we were making our numbers. The team was great. I got a phone call from a recruiter and they said, hey, there's a small marketing company. They're trying to grow called Merkle. It's a digital marketing agency. They would love to talk to you. We had a lot of chats. They reminded me a lot of Price Waterhouse back in the days I first joined. And I said, it might be fun to go do that again. And so I left IBM. It was hard to leave my team. The farewell party was simply epic. They got videos from people I wouldn't imagine. And it was actually very sad. And to this day, some of those people are some of my best friends now. But I left. I joined Merkle, moved to Baltimore, Maryland, and first 18 months were great. I learned so much that a lot of the MarTech people were further ahead than the IT people when it came to the use of data and the immediacy of data in the digital space. It was a humbling experience to realize how far behind IBM and a lot of other consultancies were in the use of data, especially real-time data. So learned a lot. The owner was a great guy. For various reasons, he had to sell the company. He chose to sell it, and having just gone through an acquisition a few years before, I said I might want to look other places, and that's when I took a look, and I actually accepted a job from a little company in Philadelphia. The IBM opportunity came up, and like I said, Philly cheesesteaks or beignets and coffee in Paris. So it was an easy decision for me to make. Gave you a long-winded story, but you asked an important question.
I love that story, and obviously it's great to see you lead by example. Basically,
it's the only way I've learned to really get a team to buy into what you're doing. If you're not willing to work as hard as they are and show the same passion they are, they'll only raise your passion to what you're willing to contribute. If I'm going to give it up my all, then I've never seen a team not give it their all.
So then, looking back, were there any key moments that shaped your career?
I think every major decision I made in terms of moving jobs, moving from one company to the next, were all major things that I could think of. A lot of engagements came up. It's like, why am I doing this? I would say I almost embraced the challenging projects more than the successful projects. I've had more than my fair share of really successful projects, things that are just textbook perfect. I've only had one project that's actually shut down, and that's because a client lost funding. And that it wasn't from the work that we were doing because we were actually on time and on track. They had their funding cut. I've had to work through a lot of challenging projects. In fact, for a while, they would say, hey, we got a fire over here. We need you to go put it out. And I became kind of an IBM firefighter to fix broken projects. And that I've never seen a project that can't be fixed technically. I've seen messes that have been created that aren't fixable. Technology has never been the problem. Either the requirements were bad or unknown, or the people on the project just weren't aligned with the stakeholders and what we had to accomplish. So that's both the good and the bad, because the client asked for A, we build A, it's perfect. We test it, it's perfect. This is awesome. We build it, it's not what they want. We look at the requirements, and I can't tell you the number of times I've been told, yeah, it's what I asked for, but not what I need. You got to fix this. And I don't have any more money. Each of those experiences, really good, really bad, really stupid, are things that have informed my career and have been those pivot points to say, okay, here's the path we're going to follow here. Here's the path we're going to follow here. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it's good. I think your career shapes you, doesn't it? Like anything challenging projects, you're learning constantly, aren't you? You gain that knowledge and then you utilize it in wherever your career goes, in career, life, personal, whatever. I think it does. Everything adds to your ability to move forward.
I completely agree. And one thing I would say, this is for anybody who's listening, I've been successful and I've worked really, really hard, but my success isn't just, it's hard work There's always the element of luck. And here's another really important thing, and that is the people in your life. I have been super blessed, not blessed, super blessed to have some really good mentors, and I have them to this day. I'm a senior executive, but I have mentors that I will go to and say, what do you think of this? Or what would you do if you were me? And it's great to have that sounding board of people you respect, people who are equally, if not more successful than you are, and say, what do you think? And they say, good plan, here's your risk. Good plan, I wouldn't do it. Bad plan, fix it this way. And by getting that great, frank conversation from people you know and respect and can confide in is incredibly important. So my whole career, like I said, my first boss, James Martin, he's the guy that actually recommended me go work at Oracle because you need to go work for Oracle. And he actually got me in, helped me get in, introduced me to Larry Ellison. Larry actually gave me some advice. I doubt he remembers me because I was such a junior kid, and he's met a million people since. But it's funny, you meet people, you learn things from them, and you incorporate that in your corpus of experience, and that becomes your internal sounding board to make decisions that you can be confident in.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think you want to just, whoever you meet, you want to learn from, don't you? You want to be sort of you don't want to be the cleverest one in the room, sort of. And it's you, because everyone's got special talents. You can learn anything from anyone, can't you, really, if you look deeply into what they're doing.
So Ben, the longer I'm in the business world, I don't want to say older, but the longer I'm in the business world, the dumber I get. When I say that, I realize if I surround myself with people smarter than me, we're going to have the best art solution in the world. Whether I'm building a client's thing, something for IBM, it's just having the right people with the right eminence, the right skill set is the best thing you can do. So I just brought in a young kid. Yeah, I'll share his name. His name is Usama, lives in Morocco. He's probably 23, 24 years old. Wicked smart kid. He'll work 90 hours a day. And you just look at him and you say, this guy's going to be a leader. And he's only been part of my group for maybe 2 months. He's already done an incredible amount of work, and his opinion is already well valued in our team. So the best piece of advice I give anybody is have good mentors and have good people around you, both from somebody to assist you, the mentors, and people to work with you on a daily basis. I know not everybody gets that opportunity. I've been, like I said, my career is filled with a lot of luck and a little bit of positioning. And then I have just enough smarts to make sure I surround myself with really smart people.
So then, have you ever faced a major career setback?
I think we all do.
Yep.
I guess it wasn't a setback, but when I went to Merkle, I was planning to stay there for a good long time. I wasn't planning to stay there less than 2 years, the owner of the company. And there's some things I may not have taken that decision to join Merkle. I'm glad I did. And actually, it was a smart thing to do. And the experience I got was really valuable around MarTech and real time and CMOs, and business world's actually smarter in data than oftentimes our IT brethren. But I didn't realize that this would be only an 18-month adventure. So I didn't really plan to have me look for something else at that juncture. And at the same time that happened, I also had a little bout with cancer. So it was like two things hit me at once that I wasn't really prepared for. But you don't get the chance. Sometimes extenuating circumstances are things you can't control. So you just smile and say, okay, we'll deal with it. We dealt with both. I found myself back at IBM in a better position. And the experience I gathered in that 2 years in Merkle were valuable to this day. And again, another valuable set of experiences and people that I've met.
Amazing. Yeah, obviously it's what everyone's going to have problems. Like everyone's going to have a setback. Everyone's going to have personal problems. It's how you deal with it. You have to, I think it's unfortunately like time don't stop. You have to move forward. You have to just keep going, keep driving forward. And whatever the problem is you have in your life, work, time just does not stop.
So for me, in my career, in my life, I've been doubly blessed because I haven't got a job yet. I'm getting paid, but I'm getting paid for doing something I might just do for fun on the weekends. What we do with data is so much fun. And, I've been telling anybody who'll listen, the world of data we're inhabiting now has so many more toys or so many more pieces of candy than it did 5, 6 years ago. Many of us grew up in the data warehousing world. We're really at primarily one use case. That was reporting and visualization. About 10 years ago, we had this thing called big data and data lakes on Hadoop, really for data science purposes. Well, then we'd start doing digital. Then we start pulling all this stuff together in what we call data platforms. And we had a common environment, typically on a cloud or on one-to-many clouds, where we had reporting and analytics, where we had data science and ML, where we had digital. And now we're adding on Gen AI and now agentic with unstructured data. So the use cases for data, the types of data that we're using and adjusting and curating to do certain things is becoming so cool. And the tools that we're using are so phenomenal. That world of data has completely transformed in the last 24 months. And it seems like just in the last 24 months, there's been two big massive changes. The first one is Gen AI. The second is agentic. And every time we think we've caught our breath, something else comes up. It's like, okay, we can cut another 30% off our projects that we just cut 30% off before. The world we're in right now is in such flux that I can't think of a more exciting time to be in the data space and being in the consulting space, because we as consultants are usually two to three chapters ahead of our constituent organizations, at least a chapter ahead. We're getting to do some of the coolest stuff out in the business in this space called data.
Yeah. And you've got AGI, other things coming up. Who knows what's happening in the future as well. There's lots happening, isn't there?
We are showing and proving at some of our clients that the move from even just traditional Gen AI, the quote unquote chatbot whole thing, but really creating agents to do things rather than just a Gen AI chatbot, is going to truly transform again. It's a second turn of the crank, that clock. When I say change a clock, things that used to take 1,000 hours, we've conservatively guessed can be 35 to 60%. We keep it at 35% because no one's going to complain if you come in early. We don't want to be too aggressive, but we know it's probably closer to 50. And we also have to get people up to speed with some of this stuff, both the clients and the consultants. So even though it could be 50, we're keeping it at 35%. And now with agentic, it's an easy another 20, 30% on top of that. So just think of it. Projects that used to be like 10,000 hour projects are going to be done in 5,000 hours or less. That's what's so exciting about the tooling that's coming out and the processes. Now, by the way, we're still going to have to build a data model. Whenever you build a data structure, whether it's an object relational database in Snowflake or you're building unstructured data stores in Cloud Object Store, well, you got to have a design pattern based on the different types of uses. Is this going to be for transactional purposes, for normal form? Is it going to be for an enterprise data warehouse, denormalized for second normal forms, for cloud object relational? Got to have some sort of structure. But do I need to build a conceptual data model, which takes 2 to 3 weeks? Do I need to build a logical data model, which takes another 3 to 4 weeks? Or do I need to generate the structures, which could take a week? No, we can do all this at once out of an agentic tool and then have a human validate it. By the way, you hear this term a lot. I'm sure you've heard it, human in the loop. Well, that's what the human in the loop means. We don't have to build the data model. We need to validate the data model that people are going to build. We had a long conversation on that earlier today. Most of us grew up with parents who were exposed to this really cool invention called the calculator. And my dad used to tell me that there were stories where, there's debates in industry and in academia, like, well, should we abandon teaching people math and just give them the calculators, or should we allow calculators in the schoolroom? I mean, it was a huge, huge debate. Finally, who can imagine now using even a calculator? Because I don't know about you, I have this cool modern tool called Excel. Wait, no, I'm sorry. Excel is about 40 years old now. So we use tools that are now just commonplace and part of our everyday living. And we just assume it, but we're still taught how to do 2 plus 2 and multiplication and division, all that. So while we have tools to do this, Excel and other artifacts, we still need to learn math. We will have tools that will build data models, but we still need to understand what those artifacts are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's like you said, we've got the tools. You still need that strategic thinking, don't you, to get things moving. Like you said, we've got the technical tools now. You can do the heavy lifting. You have to do coding as much now. You just need, I think it's getting more business domain focus, isn't it, around data? Is actually understanding the business problems and how can you actually create something that's going to solve whatever problem you have.
Spot on. And that's the most important thing, is that we are going to move into a time where organizations are going to need data practitioners that understand the business domain. I'm working in banking, retail banking, commercial banking, wealth investment management, or I'm working in a telco, and I need to have that industry expertise along with that domain expertise. Customer marketing, is it's around supply chain. So these are all things that, quite frankly, these are things we've gotten away from because we have celebrated knowing Python and Scala and Snowflake and Redshift. And yeah, those tools are important, but the tools that use these technologies are becoming easier and easier to use. And it's less about defining the patterns into them because they're already predefined and we know how to build patterns for third normal form and dimensional and NoSQL. But what we don't have is people that know the domain and industry knowledge that can confirm what we generate out of these Gen AI tools is the right solution for that particular business problem.
Yeah, and then also you are getting, like you said, you touched on like then it's the tools there. Like a lot of people are trying to get more specialised in them when really, look, you should be focusing more, especially like early data scientists, like focus on the mathematical side. So many leaders say people are just not learning like they don't understand the basics of mathematics, statistics, which should be the foundations for your knowledge, and then you add the tools on top.
You're absolutely right. In fact, we brought up something a few minutes ago, and I think it's a good time to celebrate it a little more. Some of the people who I was incredibly fortunate to work with in the beginning of my career. I brought up one, James Martin. There's another guy. I don't know if you ever heard of him. His name was John Zachman. Google him afterwards because he's the father of much of what we do with information as well. So James Martin and John Zachman, to the luminaries of the space they built the foundation of much of the data work we do on to this day. He built something called the Zachman framework, which is still brilliant in the fact that it looks at a system and looks at it from a data dimension, a process dimension, a network dimension, a people dimension, and conceptual, logical, physical instantiation. It was a very simple and easy pattern. And I got a chance to meet him because his cohort, because John was semi-retired, actually was a neighbor of mine. And he actually became one of my mentors. John said, I observed the pattern. I didn't invent this. I was doing some work in aerospace. And I just sat down one day and I came to me and goes, this is just a pattern. It's a series of rows and columns. And he was right. And to this day, when we think of data, it's a series of data structures. And I don't really care what we call it. It hasn't changed. And it's really a three-tiered model. And every single data environment I've worked on, from Teradata to big data to now, ends up being a three-tiered architecture. That is some sort of data store where you're going to put in raw data, some sort of data store that you're going to conform it, some sort of data store for the application you want to use. What we call it is a data lake, a data warehouse, and a consumption layer with data products in it. But it hasn't fundamentally changed in the 30 years that I've seen this business from college to now. It's very consistent, and certain patterns will always be consistent. The way you structure data for reporting, the dimensional model, something, Ralph Inman, talk about it, Freudian slip. Ralph Kimball did many years ago, hasn't changed. Bill Inman's concept of the enterprise hasn't really changed. They're all evolved, but there's still important patterns that we have learned. And you still need to learn to understand these patterns to solve certain problems. But I can now instantiate those patterns in Gen AI to produce it. But then I got to have the smarts to understand, okay, this isn't going to work. Even though Gen AI created this, it's going to create a performance problem the way we set up this fact and dimension data. You still need to know the math, but you don't have to do it on a piece of paper. You don't need to do it on a calculator. You can do it in Excel. You can still do the model. You don't have to build it yourself in PowerPoint or Irwin. You can now do it in Gen AI tools. Ben, does that make sense to you?
Yep, I think it's like again. I have this conversation with a lot of leaders. You need to keep the basics basic. Like business is business. Like so many people are like again on the technical side, they're focusing more on the talent tools instead of the like knowledge, whatever your domain is. And then again, also like if you're talking, I was going to dig into Gen AI in a bit. It's a lot of businesses are focusing on the Gen AI instead of actually the business. And so sometimes I think people do get the chasing a shiny toy, aren't they, in the market?
Well, I think you just came up with something that I think everybody just saw the phenomenon. And we do this with every new way. The industry, they just run to it, and the research firms, the Gartners, the HFSs. And by the way, I have friends at these firms, but I do chide them for this because they do a lot. They cause a lot of this stir, and so do the software companies, the cloud companies, and all of them. And that is, we got to do this. This is the hot new thing. And how many companies did all these POCs with Gen AI and said, okay, we got it to work, but we're not sure what to do next. And a lot of those POCs were never put to production, or they don't know what to do. Now, some of it is because they don't really have a good data strategy. And they start talking about their data quality, which I always find is pretty interesting because most Gen AI projects are going to be done with unstructured data. Ben, I've been in the business a few years. How are you going to identify good quality or bad quality from PowerPoints, PDFs, JPEGs is beyond me. But the structured data problem that people have never solved, yeah, that's still a problem. But I think it's not just that, it's what are you trying to accomplish with Gen AI? What are you trying to automate to do better? Or what is the business outcome you're trying to achieve with this new tool that's going to make your business better? You know, the thing I loved about digital, it's creating new channels to interact with your customers. And quite frankly, I still think the digital revolution is still going on. I don't think the transformation is complete. We've kind of lost focus because there's a shiny new object called Gen AI, which I think is going to evolve really digital transformation 2.0, which I think we're starting to already see. At least that's a phenomenon I'm seeing. It could be called something different. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. But it's the shiny object paradigm, especially in IT. It's a shiny new object. We got to go chase it. We're not sure what we're going to do with it. Once we do get it and we actually get a POC, what now? So it gets back to your business strategy. What are you trying to accomplish? How are you trying to make your business better with whatever new phenomenon is coming out? And by the way, I say phenomenon because you can put in digital, you can put in Gen AI, you can put in whatever supply chain optimization, whatever shiny, whatever tool you want to add. What are you trying to do with this new cool thing that'll make your business better? A lot of people don't go through that step.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's good just to keep things simple. When you try and make it complex with all these new shiny toys, sometimes you just need actually what we're trying to achieve here. Just keep it nice and simple, and then just keep it roll out from there.
One of the things I'm actually a big advocate. And look at when I was growing up, and I was a pretty young guy. I was still at Oracle. I had a chance to work with talk about some luminaries, James Hammer and Michael Hammer and James Champy, the guys who wrote the business process reengineering book, Reengineering the Corporation. Oracle brought them in to give us some lessons and overviews, and some of their lessons really hit home, and I kind of put in my back pocket. I'm almost seeing Hammer and Champy 2.0 with the Geek Way. I really love the Geek Way. I think that makes a lot of sense. One of the things I get from both those books, and it's really a simple but sage thing, and we always tend to forget about it, is let the perfect be the enemy of the good. A lot of times people are trying to do things with technology which are super fancy, super evolved, but doesn't really give a return on investment. It's not, it doesn't give you any return, but you spend, $2 million and you can now do a report 3 times faster than you could before, but it's really not changing your business. Well, it's not necessarily a good return on investment. It's what are you trying to do with the technology? Why? And make sure you got a proper ROI case or ROI case to put behind it. My MBA was in accounting, Ben. So I was working at Price Waterhouse at the time. I wanted to become a partner, not a principal. So I went through and took all the undergraduate accounting courses after my undergraduate computer science and accounting degree as a graduate. That still creeps into my point of view.
Okay, let's move on to the data topic then, because obviously Gen AI, I mean, everyone's trying to do it, should we say? So I guess obviously key is blending it into the business, isn't it now? Getting it into our processes. So with Gen AI, I mean, it's becoming the primary use case for many organizations now. And I guess how is it reshaping business priorities?
I think it's important to understand how I view it for my business. I view Gen AI both horizontally and vertically because I run a business. I run a data consulting business. So I've used Gen AI to re-engineer how we do data from beginning to end, from strategy through delivery, through maintenance and evolution. So just observing how we've had to do it from our business has helped inform me how we help our clients do it. And it's you need to really look at each of your different processes and say, are there opportunities to automate and integrate more pervasively than you have in the past? So I think this is going to, I kind of mentioned it a few minutes ago. I think this is going to truly create digital 2.0. How do we go through and do that next level of automation through all of the business processes that you have? By the way, this phenomenon, I would be shocked if we're done with it in 2 years. I think it will not crest for at least 3 to 5 years. Could be wrong, but don't expect to see people really fully understand and exploit agentic AI in the next 24, 36 months. It's just going to take time for them to figure it out. Start evaluating where's your biggest pain point, where can you start to automate to reduce your costs and time.
And yeah, I think it's, like you touched it there. Businesses have got to find out their strategy, how they're going to utilize it. Again, I mean, it's the same with generative AI, isn't it? I think it's took businesses quite a while to get you to grips of what they're going to do with it. So again, things like agentic AI, that's going to be the same. It's not an overnight, all right, we can do this. It's actually that strategic thinking and how can we actually reshape this business to increase efficiency, grow, all the business basics, really, isn't it?
You're spot on. Earlier this year, it was in April, IBM had a conference and we had a bunch of roundtable sessions, and clients from all over the world came to this conference. It's in Boston. And we said, how are you guys applying generative AI? And it was fascinating because I was the moderator and we had people from IBM sitting, helping drive the conversations at actually it was about 8 different tables. And about a third of them were doing some really cool things. Like, well, we already got this and this. We've already got our next use cases set up. Here's our problems or questions. How do we better set up our data world to exploit this? And some really interesting, but technical, easily answerable technical questions. But then the other third were kind of like, we haven't even started because we're not even sure where to start. Because they really hadn't thought through what am we going to use agentic AI, Gen AI for? And they were still struggling with what's the first use case. And they were trying to find the perfect use case. By the way, that great example of organizations letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. And they just really didn't have any strategy at all. And then there's people in the continuum between them. But you could tell the companies who got it were already planning their third or fourth POCs and also strategy, how to make this an ongoing organizational function, are the companies that will probably be around in 10 years. Some of those who didn't get it, be curious to see where they're at on the stock exchanges in the next 3 to 5 years, because a lot of these companies just didn't get it, at least the people they had sent to this conference.
Brilliant. And yeah, it was sadly, it's going to be interesting. Well, it's interesting times ahead, how businesses are going to implement it, how they're going to adapt. Obviously, you've got so many different businesses now and different journeys, especially ones with the more mature businesses. Obviously, there's a lot more to unwrap, isn't there, and as opposed to the smaller companies. So it's obviously a lot more, there's a lot of thinking to be done. Strategies need to be implemented and embedded with the business, or you're going to fall behind because work efficiencies are going to be improved by the firms that utilize the tool.
Well, here's the thing, Ben. None of these decisions and challenges are technical. What they are cultural. When I say cultural, we're not sure we want to do this. And I've already seen that. We've had conversations with people like, well, you can cut your time in half. We don't know if we want to really do that. Why? Well, we have to employ a lot of people. Okay, then why are we sitting here? Because if you don't want to save time and money, then there's this may not be the right thing for you. We're starting to go against, even in the consulting world. If I have told my colleagues at IBM, I am not going to need 7,000 data engineers going forward. I can do it with a lot less. Now, that doesn't mean we need to fire 7,000 people or fire 6,000 and keep 1,000. But there's going to be X number of thousand people that are going to have to figure out what to do next as consultants. And it's going to be domain expertise. It's going to be industry expertise. It's technical excellence. It's configuring these tools. So there'll be new jobs, but the world's going to change in a very radical way with this drive with the Gen AI and agentic that I don't know if everybody's really ready for. I guess it's the typical three-pronged way, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. And that is, some people are going to get it real quick. Some people are never going to get it. And a big chunk of the world is going to be right in the middle.
So how could... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, do you observe the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, this, again, I've had the conversation as well, like, about people. It's come up, like, how are we going to deal with that? It's come up from different managers. I guess, again, also when we start speaking to like more the larger companies, there's a lot of complexities there. I think it's a lot of knowledge gap that needs to be actually understood as well.
I agree. Is it a knowledge gap or is it an acceptance gap?
Probably a bit of both. I think also, like you said, I think the fear element's going to come into it, isn't it? Like you said, if you've got these tools, it is going to take some jobs and then create new ones. Do people want to have them harsh conversations, isn't it? I think that cultural change is the challenging bit, I think, for individuals.
I mentioned earlier that I'm a Midwestern kid and I grew up here in Detroit. My dad worked for GM and I was a pretty young young boy. In fact, my dad was Lotto. He had me pretty late in life. He and I were watching TV one night, and there's a bunch of union guys for, I think, Chrysler, who's really not around anymore, by the way. It's now Stellantis. But they were saying, we don't work for car companies. We work for the union. And they were complaining about automation and this, and they were going to fight automation. It's like, my dad said, these guys don't realize they're not going to have their jobs in 5-10 years. Now, General Motors, when my dad worked there, had about 350,000 or 360,000 people. It was one of the biggest employers in the United States, if not the biggest outside the federal government. And today it only has about 60,000 people. I think the same thing is going to happen for a lot of businesses because of this. Now, where all those people go, that's a political thing I don't want to get into, and I wouldn't even know how to get into it. But I do know agentic AI is going to disrupt everything and everywhere in ways we haven't really imagined yet. I see it coming. I don't know the full ramifications of it. I know what it's going to do in the data world. I've already seen it. We've already experienced it. We've got assets that do this disruption, and we're continuing to evolve them that are becoming more and more impactful in terms of the amount of work it's disrupting and the amount of resources it's going to disrupt, in a positive way. In other words, instead of having 5 people, I'm going to need 1 person for 2 or 3 hours. The benefits, the productivity of these assets and tools using agentic, I don't think a lot of folks have truly understood yet. So when it gets both to acceptance and knowledge. So I think it's a little bit of both. And it's just the sheer scope of the change that we're going through.
Yeah. And it's going to be the reskilling and upskilling for individuals. You're going to have to do it. It's just, I said, there's going to be massive change going to happen. New jobs are going to be created. What they are going to be, we'll see in the future. But you've got to adapt your skill set now. It's just, you can't just stay as you are. You need to constantly be learning. That's just the way we are now.
Tell you what, we started this with me saying how much fun it is being the data field. I'm going to be Midwestern here. None of this is going to happen without data. If you think of every agentic application, if you think about every Gen AI application, it's going to require data. Now it's going to require structured, unstructured, transactional, semi-structured. But the need for data that fuel is going to become more and more valuable, more and more needed as we go into these agentic applications. It just is. For those in the data space, you may not be doing Python anymore, but your skill sets are going to be needed more than ever. So I know we started this with the data world. We're going to, I guess, finish it with the data world. But again, with all these broader changes, I just know the data field is going to be robust and growing.
So, how can companies effectively thread their Gen AI into existing processes without creating this chaos or redundancy?
That's probably above my pay. How you do it without disruption? I don't think you can do it without disruption. I think what you have to do is to take a safe space that is open to change and show how you do this and incrementally roll it out. If you try to do it's really the shock to the system, because if you shock the system too much,
Mm.
you get resistance and will not be stopped, because this will not stop. You may stop in one organization for a period, then that organization will fall behind. It's inevitable. By the way, this is inevitable, because if one company stops it, that doesn't mean everybody's going to stop it everywhere. So that just puts that company at a competitive disadvantage. So how can you implement this new approach? I don't even want to use the word technology, this new approach that will automate things in a way we've never imagined, in such a way that will not be as disruptive, minimally disruptive, and allow the disruption to occur organically from one part of the organization that's a safe space to the broader part of the organization. That's the only way I see it really
Yeah.
going in a thoughtful way. Because if you try to transform your whole organization, those things tend to fail. And then you're left behind by the people who do figure it out.
Yeah, because you got the change management piece is massive, because like you've touched on it earlier, that cultural change, communication, it takes time. It's not like an overnight sensation. You need to it takes time to effectively manage that. 'Cause obviously, you're dealing with humans, different types of people, and that's not a fast activity. It takes time to do it correctly as well.
100%.
So then, let's move to the next question. What does the sort of evolution of data look like in a Gen AI driven environment? And then is traditional data architecture still fit for purpose?
Yes and no. It's a great question. I brought three-tiered model. I'm still waiting to see. By the way, I've seen databases who had this in the past, where you can actually embed true objects like PDFs and video and all that kind of good stuff into an object relational database, but I haven't seen it at scale. I think the modern data architecture, especially the data lake, is a wonderful repository where you can start to gather unstructured data. Semi-structured, structured, that still goes into that conform layer, but try to conform data by customer with bitmaps, PDF files, and JPEGs. Good luck with that. And video and voice. I just don't see how that's going to happen. So the traditional data lake is going to be a good place to store that kind of data, especially this stuff is big and it can get really big if you collect enough of it, and also pretty bulky. So you don't really want to keep it in high cost storage like an object relational database, like a Snowflake or a AWS Redshift or Microsoft Data Fabric. I would keep it in Cloud Object Store. So that's a good way to do it. The tools and how to ingest it and curate it are going to change. Real time is going to change how we do both structured and semi-structured as well. And a lot of that's already in place. I'm seeing more and more Kafka-based architectures or API-based architectures, and I'm seeing a little bit of both in most companies. So I think we're going to talk about a natural evolution, but the one thing I'm seeing that Gen AI is starting to really promote is that collection for the first time at scale of unstructured data is now very focused, where in the past it was a lot of science experiments. So the enterprise grade level architectures and approaches for pulling that data in for Gen AI, I think are here. RAG patterns are now 3 years old. Most people figured it out or not, but those who have are the ones who are doing some really cool stuff. I do find it interesting that you're seeing companies like JP Morgan Chase, which in my mind has truly pivoted to being a technology company, building their own large language models. Kind of makes sense from certain perspectives. And I think you're going to see more and more of that as this whole industry continues to evolve.
Definitely. What sort of skill sets do you think will become essential in the marketplace as Gen AI becomes more embedded in daily operations?
I think I brought most of them up. I thought around domain and architectural experience is going to be really important. And that really does include both structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. That's going to be really important that you understand those three domains, because it's not just structured data anymore. And how do you engineer it for performance and cost is really important. Like I just shared about where I would store my unstructured data. But then I've already kind of pivoted beyond that, because here's the next big horizon. We're going to be digging through these PDF files and these PowerPoint files and these scraps of paper that we have digitized and pulling information out. And we are going to be correlating that and integrating it and aggregating it with structured data. As we start to do that, now we get back to more traditional data quality, but further down the chain, because you really can't do data quality on unstructured data, but you can do it on the results of unstructured data that's integrated with structured data. So I think there's a whole nother level of learnings and tooling that we have started to think about and even started a solution, but that's going to be part of the next phase of what we do with information.
Nice, I like that. Then, do you feel companies are doing enough to prepare their teams for this Gen AI shift?
Now, a lot of folks are looking at it strictly from a technical perspective. I think they're looking at it, okay, we got this new technology, we got to figure out what to do. A lot of people want to focus on this cool thing called RAG patterns. Okay, it's great. How are you chunking up your data? Cool. It's not, by the way, it's not as hard as it sounds, but it does sound pretty cool. Like, hey, I've established RAG patterns. Looks great on your resume. But it gets back to, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to integrate this into the business? Now, this is the same problem we had with data science 10, 15 years ago. We were building these cool predictive models. I built some of those things. Here's my Merkle tree with my probability analysis on this particular chunk of your customer segment of people from the age 35 to 40 who lived in Manchester. I was doing some work in Liverpool at the time. Okay, that's cool. Okay, what are you going to do with it now? We're going to, make a decision on whether we should keep pursuing this or not. Like, decision on what? On the project. No, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with the information? People would set up these data science experiments and they would evaluate the results, say, this is cool, but not really build it in their processes and make things better. That's the same thing I'm seeing a little bit with Gen AI. It's got to go from the science experiment to the business value segment. So no, companies aren't doing enough. They need to figure out, how are they going to set up teams in their organization on the business side, not in IT, to solve those things with Gen AI and Agentic. And good grief, let's just go back to the old predictive models. What are you going to do with all this stuff? Where are you going to take advantage of improving your supply chain processes or your CRM processes or your financial closing processes with these tools?
Brilliant. Tony, that's all the questions. And to be honest, I love your passion, your knowledge, and you've shared some amazing insights for the listeners. So thank you for joining the podcast.
Ben, it was a pleasure and a privilege. Thanks so much, and best wishes to you and your audience.
You've been listening to Data Analytics Chat Podcast. Subscribe to our channel for more stories and insights in data and career.